Hello, fifth grade. It's Monday, the 18th of May, 2020, and it's our language time. And so I wanted to go over with you what you'll be doing in language today. So we're starting a new chapter on punctuation. So you're going to learn about commas, apostrophes, semicolons, colons, etc. Let me turn a light on for you here so you can maybe see a little better. I don't know if that helps or not. So I'm just going to go over the 3 rules with you, and then you'll be able to do this on your own quite easily if you follow the rules. All right. So the first rule is, I'm on page 135. We're doing 135. I'm sorry, we're on page 133. Forgive me, and we're doing 133 through 135. So there's rules to read through. I have just basically summarized them, so I want you to read through them, but for the sake of me showing you, I'm going to try to stay out of the way here. It says, comma rule number 1, use commas to separate 3 or more items in a series, 3 or more items in a row. So in Think A on page 133, and it goes on to page 134, and Think A, B, and C are going to be on the first 2 comma rules. Comma rule number 1, which is right here. So that's number 1. We have number 2 here. We have number 3 here. So comma rule number 1, it says, like I said, use commas to separate 3 or more items in a sentence. So it says, the people of Japan eat rice, comma, bamboo shoots, comma, and fish. So the 3 things in the sentence are rice, bamboo shoots, and fish. And we use commas to separate those 3 items. The people of Japan eat rice, comma, bamboo shoots, comma, that's number 3, and fish. That's number 2, and fish. So to separate 3 or more things. Okay? Comma rule number 2 says, use comma rule number 2, or comma rule number 2. Use commas to separate 2 or more adjectives that come before a noun. We know that adjectives are words that describe nouns. Which one, what kind, how many, whose, etc. So here, the example in your book is the sore, comma, tired horse limped to the barn. Again, the is an adjective, sore and tired. Those 3 words are adjectives before the noun horse, describing the word horse. So the sore, comma, tired horse limped to the barn. So comma rule number 2 separates adjectives describing the noun. There could be 5 adjectives that describe the noun. You put a comma between each one. You don't just write the sore, tired horse. The sore, comma, tired, comma, hungry, comma, etc. Whatever it says, however many adjectives before the noun that describe horse. Okay? Comma rule number 3 says use a comma before the conjunctions and, but, or, nor, for, and yet. And it goes on, I just didn't have enough room to write it, but that was the gist of it. On page 135, comma rule number 3, it says use a comma before the conjunctions and, but, or, nor, for, and yet when they join parts of a compound sentence. So when you have 2 sentences joined by a comma in a connecting word, okay, I'm sorry, my phone's doing something weird there. Joined by a comma in a connecting word, this is your connecting word is a conjunction. So 2 sentences, 2 short choppy sentences that you want to put together to form one larger sentence. So here we have comma rule number 3, use a comma before the conjunctions and, but, or, nor, for, and yet when you have 2 sentences combined together. And so the example is Jesus is a good shepherd, comma, and he cares for his sheep. Again, the first sentence would be Jesus is a good shepherd. Okay. The second sentence would be he cares for his sheep. So if we want to combine those 2 sentences, those 2 shorter sentences into one compound sentence, it would be Jesus is a good shepherd, comma, and he cares for his sheep. Okay, so on pages 133 to 135, you're going to be using one of those 3 rules. Again, the first comma rule, use commas to separate 3 or more items in a series. I read our example to you already. Again, the people of Japan eat rice, comma, that's one item. Bamboo shoots, comma, that's 2 items, and fish, that's 3 items, and we use commas to separate those. Comma rule number 2, use commas to separate 2 or more adjectives that come before a noun. Okay, so here we have sore and tired that come before the noun horse, and we put a comma between the words sore and tired. And then comma rule number 3 on page 135, use a comma before the conjunctions and, but, for, nor, and, yet when it says they join parts of a compound sentence. So here it's joining the first part of the sentence, Jesus is a good shepherd, comma, and he cares for his sheep. All right, so on page 135, that's how you're going to do that. So looking at Think A now on page 133 and 134, you're going to use comma rules number 1 and number 2. Okay, you're not going to use comma rule number 3 until page 135. So Think A on page 133 says, use commas to separate items written as series in these sentences. Okay, so that is using comma rule number 1. Then on page 134, Think B says, use commas to correctly separate the adjectives in these sentences. If no comma is needed, show that the sentence is correct by writing C in front of the number, a capital C. So for example, look at number 4, Think B number 4. It says, David was God's chosen king to rule Israel after Saul. There are no 2 adjectives that are in there describing in front of a noun that we need to put commas in front of. So you just write a capital C next to number 4, okay? There are 3 correct in Think B. In Think C, use commas to separate items written in a series in these sentences. So you're going back to comma rule number 1, which was use commas to separate 3 or more items in a series, okay? So it tells you exactly in the directions for Think A, B, and C, it tells you which comma rule you are using just by the way they're defining what they're asking you to do. On page 135, it says commas in compound sentences, use a comma, like I said, comma rule number 3, 135, page 135, use a comma before the conjunctions and, but, or, nor, for, and yet when they join parts of a compound sentence. Okay, so in Think A on page 135, it says, read each of the following sentences carefully and put a box around each conjunction. If the conjunction joins a verb, put CV in the blank before the sentence. If the conjunction joins a compound sentence, put CS in the blank and insert a comma before the conjunction. Okay? So number 1 says, Saul looked for the lost donkeys, but could not find them. Okay? Could not find them. Now, that is not a compound sentence. That's just a compound verb. It's not 2 different sentences. Okay? So you would just put a box around the word but. I'm going to do this for you on a piece of paper real quick. Let me get a piece of paper. So we're going to do, so it says Saul looked for the lost donkey, but could not find them. Okay, so I've written that sentence. Saul looked for the lost donkey, but could not find them. Okay, lost donkeys, excuse me. I wondered because it was them. So what you would do is you say, well, it's not a compound sentence. If it were a compound sentence, it would say Saul looked for the lost donkeys, comma, but he could not find them, because you need a subject in that second part of the sentence, in that second complete sentence that you're joining by the connecting word. But here, it's just continuing to tell the story. There's no subjects, but could not find any. There's no subject there. So this is a compound verb. So I would box the word but, just like I did, and in the blank, I'd write CV for compound verb. That is a compound verb, not a compound sentence. All right? Because there's not a subject here for the second part of that sentence. And there's no comma between donkeys and the word but. All right? So then look at number 2. It says velvet. Velvet feels smooth. Feels smooth. And it, oh, there's a subject there, looks rich and glossy. Rich and glossy. Okay? Velvet feels smooth and it looks rich and glossy. Okay? So we have to put a comma in there because there are 2 sentences. Velvet feels smooth, comma, and it looks rich and glossy. It is a subject of that second sentence. So there's 2 short sentences there. There's 2 complete sentences. Velvet looks smooth could be its own sentence, and it looks rich and glossy could be its own sentence. So that's a compound sentence because it's joined by a comma, the 2 sentences, velvet feels smooth, comma, and it looks, I'm sorry, it's hard to read upside down, and it looks rich and glossy, okay? First sentence, second sentence joined by a comma and a connecting word. So I box my connecting word and, look at my rule, conjunctions and, but, or, nor, for, and yet, those are the words, and I would write CS for compound sentence in the blank, okay? CS for compound sentence in the blank. And that's how you do page 135. Think B says on the bottom, read each of the following sentences carefully, inserting commas where needed. On the blank before each number, write the number of the rule number 1, rule number 2, or rule number 3 that sentence applies, okay? So you're going to look at the sentence, put the commas where you believe they go, and then put the rule that is associated with that particular sentence and where the commas go. Again, rule number 1 joins 3 or more items together in a sentence. We have our example. Rule number 2, you put, in other words, with rule number 1, you put a comma after 3 or more items that are detailed in a sentence. Rule number 2, you're going to put commas between the adjectives before the noun that those adjectives are describing, like, what was it, tired and sore, comma, tired. And rule number 3, you put commas when you are joining a compound sentence, a comma and a connecting word, and, but, or, nor, for, and yet. All right? So we've done things like this before, so do a good job on that, and I look forward to the results.